is abroad. So that is why we don't see any benefit of all the years they've been extracting that natural resource. And now 30% of total gold output is coming from local small-scale mining and galamsey. 30%. And all of that money is remaining in Ghana. But it is creating this diabolical situation concerning water that we're faced with. So in legalizing galamsey, you don't wake up one day and just decide you're legalizing galamsey, because it requires serious attention to the kind of training they will be given, serious attention to changing the entirety of the way they go about their practices. And that would require cross-party support, and would require so many experts to have to be involved in that process. Because as at now, the damage that they are causing to our water bodies is horrific.
Okay. Thank you very much. Let me bring in Franklin Kujo of Imani. He's the Executive Director. Mr. Kujo.
Right. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Mr. Greenstreet, good evening. You make it really hard to ask you hard questions. I'd make sure I ask a very poor one. You know, I notice you want to make a pact with Ghana. You call it the Ghanaian dream. And as you know, many politicians have had wet dreams about industrialization. But you and I know that we haven't developed the discipline to manage many things public because of the over-intrusive nature of our politics and just having workforce that is completely unproductive. In fact, as I speak, we are on the cusp of resurrecting the national airline, which politics has killed several times over. Question to you, how do you intend to deal with the hard reality about industrialization, which demands viable and lasting thinking options to ensure that your own almond industry, integrated almond industry, doesn't die while you're still alive? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question, Franklin. But I wouldn't describe it as a poor one. You know, to begin with, where you alluded to is part of your submissions in terms of the resurrection of Ghana International Airlines or Ghana Airways. I don't know what the proposed name is. We all know what the hell we have gone through on previous occasions when we've attempted to have a national carrier. I mean, I'm in favor of a national carrier, but at this particular time, when we have the economic situation that we're faced with, we can't have a national carrier, especially if government is going to have any financial commitment to that project, either financial commitment through sovereign guarantee or financial commitment through loans. Because eventually what tends to happen is you give certain tax incentives to these corporations. They are able to establish some kind of quasi-monopoly. In the initial stages, they're able to offer lower prices and what appears to be a good service, and then later on, you find that the quality suddenly drops and the prices suddenly rise once they have got themselves into the situation that they want them to. CPP has moved quite considerably from the position that it used to hold, because we are in a different century. We're in the 21st century. And so that perception or tag that people put on us as being statist, it is not true, but we still believe in state intervention. And so I don't think we are ever going to support a situation whereby we have a Ghana Airways with an aircraft parked on a tarmac for 2 hours waiting for a minister and his wife to come aboard the aircraft, or the kind of financial irregularities that took place at that time. However, we do have to accept and understand that the state has to be involved in the industrialization process. For how long are we going to look at our textile industry and decide to export jobs to China for them to produce our Dutch wax for us? When we had the financial crisis in the United States of America recently, the government of the United States of America stepped in to support General Motors. They stepped in to support a bank, JP Morgan. Even when the United Kingdom had some crises many years ago, they set up things like British Steel, state-owned companies. And so sometimes, as an economist you describe it, Keynesian economics is very important to try and stabilize the situation that as a nation you may find yourself in. But we have to be very careful about the kind of model that we are going to use in the value addition change, whether in the almond tree, whether in other sectors of the economy, to make sure it works, to make sure it's not about politicians being on boards or jobs for the boys or monies of the state going amiss. So clearly things have to be done in a different way. But state intervention in strategic areas is very critical if we're going to create jobs and move forward as a nation. I think we've recently had this issue of the Commander sugar factory. So what private sector person would ever conceivably be ready currently now to go and plant those vast hectares of sugarcane that we would need to make it available for that factory? You find it very difficult to find a private sector person ready to do that. So, but we also understand that we have over $200 million going out of our country every year because of this issue concerning sugar. So the state has to step in. How the state steps in, what the state does, how transparent it is, how effective it is, are conversations that we have to have across board, not hiding in our little room at Flagstaff House and coming out with a policy which we think, no. Things have to be thoroughly analyzed, thoroughly interrogated, meticulous plans have to be prepared which can work practically in reality of today's global business environment.
Thank you very much. So you say meticulous plans have to be prepared. So let me bring in the president of the Ghana Institute of Planners, Albert Kwesi Opoku. He has a question for you. Mr. Kwesi Opoku. I guess he wasn't planning to be here. So let's take a question from Youth Empowerment Synergy, Priscilla Ajubel. Priscilla Ajubel.
Thank you. You made mention of very important actions you take towards youth unemployment in Ghana. You may be aware that one major problem facing government youth employment efforts is poor harmonization. We know that successive governments have put in place mechanisms, ad hoc mechanisms, to implement their youth agenda. And so we have the youth enterprise support, we have the youth in agriculture, we have youth employment agency, we have Maslock, and now it seems you're going to be having youth in almond farming. There seems to be little or no interactions between these entities, yet the main institution set aside that has the legal mandate to oversee these activities of youth efforts, I mean the National Youth Authority, is left with no resources. Now the question is, what would you do as a president to harmonize government's youth agenda to achieve better dividends for Ghanaian youth? Would you consider a youth law that would set the regulatory and institutional framework for youth development?
Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, I think your submissions are very accurate. And if you listen to what I have to say on the national identification system, one of the key points that I used in trying to justify its necessity is the fact that currently we have multiple agencies doing the same thing, costing millions and millions and millions of dollars to the state. And here we are, where we are in a situation to decide how are we going to allocate the scarce resources that the state has. And clearly what you have described is an area where I, unfortunately, have not properly thought it through, but where significant savings can be made. Because you do not need these multiplicity of organizations to do the same work. In terms of almond tree, it wasn't, if you remember, I made it quite clear that it is going to be an agricultural incentive-based scheme based on an outgrower concept. And I think a similar model has been tried, or is being currently tried with the Ayensu Start Factory, which has recently started operation to try and get farmers and those who are growing these things interested and able to earn income. So I don't think I would include youth in almond, as part of your list of organizations. But you're right to have the fears that it may be an additional, body like that. But I can assure you it will not be. And I was in a meeting with those who were looking at the aspect of our manifesto concerning this law, this potential law that you've talked about. So it's a subject that has cropped up at various youth fora, and we've been exchanging some emails on it, and there have been some discussions, because different people seem to have different viewpoints as to how well it can be implemented and what actually precisely the act ought to seek to achieve. Because there's no point having another law just for the sake of having a law. It has to be a law with a proper purpose, a proper objective that is going to achieve significant results for the problems that the youth in our country and society are facing at the moment.
Thank you very much. We'll take a question from a senior research fellow from the Institute for Democratic Governance, IDEG, Mr. Kwesi Jonah.
I believe he has traveled.
Okay, so Mr. Kwesi Jonah is not here. We'll take a question from the president of the Ghana Medical Association, Dr. Ebenezer Ewusi Enim. Okay. Okay, GMA representative? Yes. President, yes.
Yeah, good evening, sir. And thanks for the presentation. My question to you is on the national health insurance. What would be your government's take on the sustainability of the national health insurance? The sustainability, the GMA is quite concerned on that front. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
First of all, we have to establish whether NHIS, the funds which accrue to it, are being properly ring-fenced, because it is 2.5% of VAT that is supposed to go into NHIS. Whether all of it is actually going in there, we have to make sure, number one, those funds are ring-fenced for that specific purpose. Additionally, you will note that during my presentation, I talked about the fact that what we have to have is those health professionals managing the scheme and professional fund managers handling the money. Those who handle the money, if they are professional, usually also find a way of generating additional money, which can be then also plowed back into the fund. But you will note that I also talked about the problem of the number of road traffic accidents and how much indirectly money that is costing the state. So we could look at some ingenious ways whereby part of the money that is paid in insurance premiums could be deducted and also paid into the NHIS fund to also supplement it. Because I think we have to be creative about the sources of money from the fund as well. And I think if we're able to do that, improve the transparency, improve how the fund is managed, attract further sources of funding from other areas, then I think we are approaching greater sustainability of the fund. But I don't think that would necessarily mean that we're able to solve all our problems.
Thank you very much. We'll take a question from the Executive Director of Passionate Africa Leadership Institute, Mr. Frank Kumi.
Thank you very much, Bernard. Good evening, Mr. Presidential Hopeful. Globally, the World Bank projects that in the next decade, 10 million youth will enter the job market. Space have to be created for 600 million jobs. The local situation, I guess we don't know in terms of scientific data. In an event of your presidency, what will be the place of research and development, R&D, to guide you, to inform you in policy, prescriptions, and solutions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think if you remember during my speech, at a point in time, either during my speech or when I was answering a question, I digressed to say that we have a national security coordinator. But in my government, I would make sure, in addition, we had a national scientific advisor to advise specifically on the kinds of things that you're talking about. Because it is a complex area. And these areas, you don't just find a politician somewhere to go and put him there for the sake of giving him a job. No. You have to get an expert with a thorough understanding. And usually it's not one individual. They will form a body of people we are in favor of setting up a Ghana Global Consortium of scientific advisors who are both here and those in the diaspora, because we have a lot of Ghanaians in the diaspora who have great scientific expertise who can contribute to this process. We would also provide additional funding to resource the Center for Scientific and Industrial Research and other agencies, and make sure that because as I indicated, in my submissions, the technology gap is a poverty gap, and until we deal with this situation, we're going to continue, facing the kind of problems that we're facing at the moment. So a national scientific advisor will be appointed to deal with those.
So we have time for 2 final questions. The penultimate question will come from the Civil Society Platform on Oil and Gas, Dr. Steve Mantiel.
Mr. Greenstreet, I think I share a lot of your concerns with the extractive sector. The fact is, having mined gold for over 100 years, Ghana became HIPIC, highly indebted poor country. Indeed, a sad commentary of how we have mismanaged the mineral sector. Oil and gas presents us with another opportunity to use another God-given resource to transform our society. To correct the mistakes of the past, we have made legal provisions for elaborate disclosure in the petroleum sector, in the hope that transparency will lead to better accountability and, for that matter, better use of petroleum revenues. Question is, how do you feel when you hear that our oil money, which is expected to improve the lives of ordinary people, is being used to finance bus rebranding? And what will you do